All right, it is Flyers game day as the Flyers wrap up a 3-game road trip in St. Louis with a matchup against the Blues. The road trip has started out very well, back-to-back wins over Minnesota and come from behind fashion, and a 2-0 win over the Winnipeg Jets. It's Jason Martinez, Chris Terry, and Brian Smith, and got to wrap up the road trip on a good note tonight, Bundy. You can't let the fact that you've had 2 successful first games impede the approach in this one in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolutely sensational win the other night in Winnipeg, and a great, I mean, actually both equally different type of wins, but both terrific nonetheless against Minnesota and then Winnipeg. You know, come from behind her against the Wild, and then you get the Flyers do an amazing job against Winnipeg, just shutting them down from the puck drop in the opening first right through the third. That's that you couldn't have drawn up a better way to start a trip. That being said, you don't want to give up to the team that you figured you might beat on the trip, right? So, the St. Louis Blues, but at the same time with St. Louis, you got to be prepared for that battle too, because they're hanging around that 8 seed looking to try to get back into it as well. So one thing I can assure you is you'll have a battle tonight in St. Louis, Missouri, and the Flyers, if they can find a way to get the extra point or the 2 points to make it 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 6, that's a major league winning road trip. It's a game though for me tonight, it's just about finding a way to get the point. Somehow find a way to get the point tonight. If you get to 2, they should, but tonight's about capitalizing, because ultimately I think everybody was kind of, even like Torts had said, well, we thought we were in tough going to Winnipeg. And if you can get a trip like this where you get 4 out of 6 points, that's ultimately ideal. But now that's presented itself differently to you because St. Louis is, I think, the lesser of the teams. Maybe Minnesota, people would say it. But now you got a real opportunity to really have had a magnificent trip by getting 2 points and a win in the final game of the trip tonight.
Can you put into perspective, Bundy, I guess, for the layman, how impressive that win was in Winnipeg when you're dealing with a situation like that where you're in a back-to-back. These guys sat on a plane for probably an hour and 10 minutes before it even took off with de-icing and all that. And then you've got customs and that sort of thing. I mean, I feel like maybe some people can't really relate to it being as difficult as it is to go and take 2 points in a situation like that.
Well, and again, sometimes those scenarios are the best ones, Brian. Like I remember, I actually remember a Flyers team several years ago when they went into St. Louis and didn't look like they had much of anything going, a very broken down lineup. And St. Louis was stacked and playing well at the time. I remember the Flyers went in and won the game. And they had a defenseman that was playing his first game in the league, I think, at the time. And we're thinking, it's going to be a tough one to win. And they found a way to win. But what happened was getting the lead the other night, a guy like Cam Atkinson, who's had an awful time scoring goals, had some chances of late, finally came through, found a way to get 1 goal, then 2. But to get a win like that against a team that's been as masterful as Winnipeg has been, I mean, 1 loss before that in the last 19 games, those are serious numbers. And to find a way to win on a back-to-back night that maybe wasn't looking like it was going to be in your favor. The Flyers just play. That's one thing. If you say anything, someone says, what has Torts done this year? He's let them play a lot more in terms of their competitiveness. He's not barking up and down the bench. He allows guys to the game to flow a little bit. And sometimes it's not going to be a good start. But this is the thing with this team. They just play hockey, and they don't let the score affect them. And I tell you what, that's a dangerous thing for a team to have. It's in a good way, because other teams are on notice, like saying, hey, this doesn't matter what happens. They're going to continue to work. Beating Winnipeg, though, a lot of things happen. I mean, they shut that team down. They really did. They didn't get a lot. They had great goaltending when they did. Defense was up. And I think that was a case, guys, the other night of like, hey, guys, you know what? Nobody thinks we're going to win. No one thinks we have a business winning this game tonight. Let's just go out and play, put an honest effort in, and let's see what happens. And that's what happened. And they were rewarded for it. They really stuck together. It was a really, really impressive hockey win the other night.
Yeah, I love the way they attacked the blue paint around Hellebuck as well. Both goals scored right on his doorstep. No Couturier tonight, still out with a nagging injury. Drysdale still out with the illness. So Mark Stahl comes out. But Noah Cates draws back in, and he's been out a while, had the broken foot. And I imagine, Bundy, that they're going to have to monitor his minutes just getting back in there. But the question is he played 1 game on the wing. It was the game where he broke the foot, and it was, I thought, his most effective offensive game in that one. Do you put him back at the center position? Probably with Couturier out, you do. But if you got a full lineup, maybe you move them back to the wing, but we'll see what they do tonight.
They have some flexibility. I mean, and certainly they have, as people said, they have some money in the bank on this road trip. There's not, I don't want to say it, there's no sense of, there's always an urgency, but I do think they have a little bit of flexibility with what they can do tonight. You have guys like Lawton, Paling, Cates that are similar type of players in a lot of ways. So it may just be a matter of Tortorella and his coaching staff looking for some chemistry tonight, again, to just keep that flow going. Anytime you welcome a new player and you're going to look out for that player to try to, when he's coming off of injury, to try to give him the best chance he can to have success. And I think that is really where the flexibility is for the coaches tonight. If you don't like him in a certain spot, you can kind of roll him back to the fourth line and maybe limit some minutes even more. But that's what I say. Like you can move Lawton up to the second line. Paling some nights you can put him in the second or third line. I mean, that's not ideal. You don't want that full time. But in a moment like this, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Cates tonight. But I think tonight's really, especially with Coots out and Drysdale still having it, there's always that thing where guys are out and there's an injury or they're sick. And again, it's kind of like, let's do this by committee again tonight. And I think they're going to find a way to try to push the right buttons and try to find a way to make this a competitive game and get a win.
I guess Cates is an individual. Jason mentioned it, and Torts has said it too, that that game where he got hurt, Torts thought it was his best game offensively. And after last year when basically he was being more of a defensive forward than anything, because that's what the Flyers needed last year. He came in this year and they wanted to develop the offense a little more, and it looked like he'd gotten there in that last game, unfortunately. But curious what you see of him as a player, just from the standpoint of now being in a little bit of a different role than he was last year.
That's a great question. And so last year he had the ability to just play, right? No one really judged him. He was allowed to make mistakes, grow in that role, and he became a very responsible two-way type of hockey player. That's good to have that, but there also has to be, and I know the way this team is playing, there has to be that offense as well. Torch is going to say that we need good defense, but you can't just sit around. And I've heard this, from coaches over the years with forwards. It's great that you're responsible defensively, but that also doesn't give you a free pass to not have to be productive offensively too. So I think that there's a happy median there somewhere. I think a lot of the defensive presence that he has, positioning, is well established and will only get better. But it's also what he does now to make himself a very, very good two-way player rather than just a defensive presence for the Flyers.
Yeah, he's got such a good stick too. There's like a lot of detail in his game. You got to get scoring by committee. It was great to see Cam Atkinson get off the schneid, that 26-game goal drought.
Yeah.
The two guys that have been providing it, Travis Konechny hasn't gone back-to-back games without a point since November 25th. In those 22 games since, he's got 10 goals, 14 assists, 24 points, plus 7, 3 shorthanded goals, a game-winning goal, and an average ice time over 20 minutes. But it's also Joel Farabee, Bundy. He hasn't gone back-to-back games without a point since December 4th. That's 18 games, and he's got 6 goals, 12 assists for 18 points. Both of those guys, and coincidentally, they're seeing a lot of ice time, have been really providing the offense on a nightly basis.
Well, that goal against Minnesota, you're going to have a hard time finding a more beautiful goal on the year in the NHL than the double bank off the boards. I mean, Coots and Drysdale starting it over to Coots again with that play, and then TK with a gorgeous pass between the legs to feather it over to Farabee for the redirection pass flurry. I always say there's certain guys in the lineup that people don't pay attention to. And that guy, for me, is Joel Farabee. Nobody pays attention to him on the other team. And that's because you might have this guy going, or you might have another player that's more, so you got to pay attention to him. But again, that's why there's certain players that have amazing years, because I just don't think that they draw the ire of the other team as much. And I think that guy's Farabee right now. He gets in and around the chances. He's creating more offense for himself. He's a net front guy for me. He's not a shooter. He's not a sniper. He has to score and he has to produce in and around the blue paint area between the hash marks. That's his bread and butter. Anyone that tells him anything differently is not helping him. That's where he's going to win the game for him, is in that area. And he's done that. When he tries to be a different player than that guy that's willing to go there, it's not pretty. There's other players that are snipers that have great shots that don't do that, that go into that area. But I always feel like the players that are willing to have the determination to go to that area are going to be rewarded for an awfully long time in this league. And I think that he's built that foundation and that attitude of wanting to do that.
Yeah, that's where Joel Farabee eats, right around the net.
That's it.
All right,
That's it.
We got Flyers Blues. Carter Hart gets to start for the Flyers tonight. Stay tuned. Tim Saunders, Todd Faberg, they've got the countdown to face-off, followed by all the first period action. You've been listening to Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network.